myself again, but it's the only way.
Good evening and welcome to NUFC Matters with me, Steve Wraith. It is the retro show, and if you thought we were scraping the barrel last week, well, this week, wow, Oxford, Reading and Peterborough. No disrespect to any of those teams, but those are the teams that the guys have got to come up with some celebrity fans, some players that played for both teams, Newcastle and those teams. We've got it all in store for you tonight as we come to the end, I guess, of the retro series. Only a couple of more episodes to go. But as always, I'm joined by Mitch, by his dad, George, Stu, Steve's on the bottom row as well. Good evening, lads. Good to see you.
Good evening.
Steve.
Okay, as always, we do around the table, around the clock, if you like, with the guys going over their previous games that they've been to. And George, as always, we'll let you go first. So over to you, George.
Thank you, Steve. First game's Newcastle Peterborough in 2009, Saturday the 7th of November at 3 o'clock at St James's Park. 43,067 in the ground. I think I sent you the programme was the first thing I sent, and we won 3-1, and the next thing I sent was Jonas Gutierrez's goal. I felt it was worth showing his because they were rare as hen's teeth, but they were always spectacular. And the next one, I think, was it stoked some memories because it was when rumours were out that Ashley was going to change the name of our ground, and this was fans bringing their homemade banners into the ground to say what they thought about it. So it was a memorable occasion. It was quite a memorable match, actually. Two teams playing reasonably good football, and I have to say the Peterborough manager Darren Ferguson lived up to his father's name by having the team did try to play football against us. However, it was a match that we won with some ease, 3-1. The first goal was by Jonas in 15 minutes. A typical long run, and everybody just seemed to part, and he kept running and running until he slid it at the bottom corner. And then number 2 from Andy Carroll on 18 minutes, a typical Carroll header. He's another one of these headers like Vic Keeble used to be, other famous Supermac used to be. When they headed the ball, it was almost as hard as when they kicked it. It just rocketed into the net and made the net bulge, which for a header's not bad. And then Peterborough came back. Yeah, came back at work for a while in the second half, but Danny Simpson calmed things down with a beautiful drive from the right-hand corner of the penalty area to make it 3-0. And then a lad called Keats scored the Peterborough goal. Our team that day was Steve Harper, Colaccini, Enrique Simpson, Taylor, Nolan Guthrie, Gutierrez, Marlon Harewood, Alan Smith, and Andy Carroll. And subs were Ryan Taylor, Peter Lovencrans, and Niall Ranger, would you believe, and Chris Houghton as our manager. I've looked at the Peterborough United team with interest because they had one or two characters in the team, one of whom we were linked with for quite some time, and that was a lad on the left wing called Michael Smith, because everywhere he went, he seemed to score goals. And I do remember for a short while, well, not such a short while, I think a whole season, the rumours were that we were looking at this lad. And I had to look at him a bit more closely. And what a character. He started at Dagenham, went to Peterborough, went to Brighton Hove Albion, then to Peterborough, then to Brighton Hove Albion, then to Luton, then to Peterborough, then to Wickham, Notts County, Wickham Wanderers, Stevenage, Wickham Wanderers, and back to Peterborough United. Well, I mean, what a career. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 clubs in a career of about 16 years. So
that sounds like the National Express coach out of Waterloo.
Yeah.
That George.
Stops everywhere.
But the interesting thing is, if you check everywhere he went, he did score goals, which is why people were interested in him. And I think in his career, he was better than a goal every 2 games. So it's why people got interested in him. The other one that I was interested in me, because it was a footballer I liked, and I never understood why he didn't make it at one of the big clubs, and that was George Boyd, with the sort of attacking midfield player who played for Scotland, but actually was born in Kent, born in the Medway, but he obviously for his parents or grandparents, he was able to get picked for Scotland. But he was another one who toured the country. Peterborough United, Notts Forest, Stevenage, Peterborough United, Hull, Burnley, Sheffield Wednesday, Peterborough United, Salford City, Peterborough United. So he travelled the country as well. But it's interesting how he always kept coming back to Peterborough. So somebody at Peterborough, obviously one of the coaches at Peterborough, felt that George Boyd was a good fit for them. And he stayed with them for quite a long time. As I say, the game was an interesting one. They played some good football, and so did we. And with 43,067 in the ground, and it was, I think, the first time I had seen Peterborough United. It has a family connection in the sense that my cousin John Gillis was the Archdeacon at Peterborough Cathedral. Had an interesting life, John. He died about 5 years ago. Lived in School Street, Gateshead, and then eventually emigrated with his father to Billingham when his father got a job in the shipyard on Teesside at Haverton Hill. And he got into Yarm Grammar School, and eventually announced to the family he was going into the church. And all of a sudden, because he decided he was going to church, he seemed to take a slightly different elevation to the rest of wherever John said when, because he was going into church, it must mean something. The rest of it were just ordinary plebs. Anyway, he stuck with it, and he ended up going to Oxford, to St John's College, Oxford. Now, for somebody from Teesside, from a shipyard family, to get into Oxford's good enough, but he did it, in my view, the hard way. He knew his A levels wouldn't get him in, so he volunteered to go for interview. So his interview must have been spectacular, because he got offered a place while he was there, straight in St John's College, to study theology, obviously, 4-year course. And in the 4th year, just before he was ordained, lo and behold, John happened to made one of the females on the course in the family way, which kind of knocked the shine off his time in the priesthood. And he obviously was sent down. But then the girl, he and Jackie decided they were getting married. But Jackie's father happened to be. Oh, I've got an echo.
Yeah, I've got an echo now.
Yeah. Anyway, Jackie's father was the boss of Eastern Electric.
George, can I stop you there, because that echo's not getting any better, mate.
You've got it as well, Steve.
That's stopped now.
Right, okay. Our father was head of East Electric, who spent a lot of money on research in Oxford, and he had a word with the dean of the master of St John's College, and lo and behold, John got invited back to finish his course and get ordained. He decided he wouldn't go into the priesthood and started teaching, and got a job in Peterborough Grammar School. And there is a football end to this story, by the way. And for years,
time massage into the story, that's for sure.
Well, that was his brother-in-law, and you can imagine the one that wanted to be a vicar, and a brother-in-law that used to like going into the Thai massage parlors in Middlesbrough, didn't get on very well. Anyway, he eventually went there and taught in Peterborough Grammar School. While he was there, he started to do some voluntary work in the cathedral. And eventually, as his teaching career came to an end, the cathedral offered him a post as archdeacon. And he took it up, and he was there until he died just a few years ago. However, we went to a family event at Peterborough at his home. Actually, it was his mother's funeral. It was Aunt Harriet's funeral. And why he buried her in Peterborough when she lived in Gateshead, I don't know. But never mind. That really is a family argument, but never mind. While we're there, John said to me, he says, if ever you come down to Peterborough to a match with Newcastle, just let us know, because Jackie's father's a director of Peterborough United Football Club. I says, you're telling me this now? I says, all the years that the Peterborough and Newcastle have been playing, we're now not even in the same bloody division, and you're telling us I can get tickets. It's a bit late. We could have done with that information a little bit earlier. Anyway, as I say, he ended his days as Archdeacon of Peterborough Cathedral, and his wife Jackie, and he has four daughters, 3 doctors and a vet. So I bet their conversation around the dinner table was interesting. And lovely kids, lovely family. The only other thing I'd say about John is only one of the male grandsons who actually got my grandfather's genes right. The 6'2", black stubbled hair, broad-shouldered guy, really nice looking fella. And but as I say, his path to the priesthood took a slight wobble, but he recovered quite well after the end of it. So that's my first experience and story.
God, we've had everything there, from 4 weddings and a funeral. I think we're going all around the houses with that one. But great as always, George. Neil, on to you, mate.
Right, I'm going to swap the games I'm doing round, so because it ties in with the game my dad's just talked about. I'll fast forward at the end of that season to April 2010. And obviously it's a season I talk about a lot because it's a season I love very much. I think between all of us who used to go together, I don't think we missed a game that season. Under Houghton, it was fantastic, following them all over the country, going to places again where we hadn't been for ages, and Peterborough was one of them. It was one of those seasons, and interestingly, by the end of the season, Peterborough, for all of their good football, they were fighting relegation. And at that time, we needed a win, and at 3 points effectively tied up promotion, would put a gap between us and Forest in third. We only had West Brom to contend with, who could have caught with. And we were in pole position to secure promotion. But the thing that we were most excited about, going to Peterborough, meant you could stand. They still had an away standing section. And that's all everybody could talk about on the way down. We're going to be standing today. It's going to be great. We're going to be standing. We're going to be standing. It was the one thing everybody was really looking forward to and had bought the tickets for, because it was going to be old school. We were going to be standing in the away end, and it was going to be mint. Thankfully, it was actually a really good game. And like when we talked about Plymouth, what they did for us when they were down and we were champions, and they did everything with such dignity. What Peterborough did was give us a really good game. They kept the whole competition honest. They could have quite easily have just taken a defeat. They were pretty much, I don't think they were mathematically down, but I think they were everything else but down. And yet they still gave us a proper game of football in the proper way. They tried to play good football still. And in fact, on 11 minutes, took the lead. Good move down the left, and Williamson was left flat-footed, and all of a sudden we're 1-0 down. And it took with the whole of the first half to really get ourselves sorted out. Meanwhile, some of those who were looking forward to standing by 45 minutes were starting to get a bit pissed off about standing, and they were realising, maybe standing wasn't everything it was made up to be. But that was another matter. It didn't matter on 45 minutes when, bang on half-time, Nolan slotted in after a really super ball from Enrique. Second half, Started really like a train. Obviously, Houghton had got into them, and after about 48 minutes, Joey Barton curled in a free kick, and it was a really good free kick at that. Top corner. Keeper had no chance, and we're on my way. 60 minutes on the hour mark. Shola Amiobi, of all people, hit a screamer from the edge of the area, and boy, was that a screamer as well. Then after that point, the game was done. We tried to play it out then. We probably just shifted into fourth gear and counter. We did lose another goal late on to make it 2-3, but that was really irrelevant. And at the end of the game, again, like Plymouth, the Peterborough fans, knowing that their club was down, did everything to congratulate us and applaud us for what we were doing in the league, and that's another one of those days that sticks with you. After the game, coming out of the ground, Peterborough fans coming over, wanting to shake your hand, saying well done, good luck in the Premier League. It's something proper about football in that, and something that I think very much is probably missing today. You know, maybe that was the last of it. You know, we're talking about 2010. Maybe in the last 10 years, a lot of that's gone. But certainly it was an enjoyable day out, and made even more enjoyable by the attitude of Peterborough as a football club and a fan base to a team that was rattling away into promotion.
Great stuff and well said, mate. Yeah. Okay, Stu, on to you, mate. We've still got an echo with you, mate.
So what's
going on?
You got what?
Every time we speak to you, our voice gets repeated and we can hear it. So there's an
Shall I go out and come back in?
I think so, yeah. We'll go to Steve Wilkinson.
Right.
Steve, good evening, mate.
Even Steve, even everybody. I'm going to also talk about Peterborough, but way back to when we first started playing Peterborough, and one of my first games going, or the early parts of my career, 1965, and it was a League Cup game against Peterborough. Just before getting into that, Peterborough is a relatively new team. Just as a bit of background, they actually joined the league in 1960, and it was a bit sad for the North East that year because I think it was the season we got relegated, 59-60. But it was also when Gateshead got kicked out of the league because in those days, unlike now, what is the fourth tier. At the moment, whoever finishes bottom of the fourth tier will get put down to the National League. In those days, there were lower leagues to go to, but you didn't automatically do it. There was actually an election. And for most times, the bottom four teams got re-elected. But on this occasion, for was it anti-North East? I don't know. And Peterborough, almost a London team that Gateshead, who actually didn't even finish bottom. They finished third bottom, if I remember rightly, from looking at the figures. They were voted out and became a non-league team as they still are. And Peterborough were elected to the Football League to join in the fourth division. But they had a great start and actually got promoted, and I think won the fourth division in the first season and went up to Division 3. Now, when we played them in this game in 1965, we'd actually gone up to the first division at that time for the season that we're talking about in past eras about games against Bolton when we won against 2-0 and all that sort of thing. So this was our time back in the first division, which we'd also been down in the second division since the 59-60 season. And when we have games, everybody, you guys and everyone listening will know that when we have games, there's certain different emotions come out from different situations. And like a winning an away game is always great. And if you beat one of the big teams, as we will tomorrow night, of course, there's an extra buzz about that feeling. And defeats are the same. There's certain defeats that you just say, well, okay, we expect to lose that game. But when you lose against a lower league team, there's an extra horrible feeling in you. And this was my first experience to losing against a lower league team because we played them in the League Cup, second round of the League Cup in the 65-66 season. We were up in the first division. Peterborough were in the third division, and on paper it was a banker home win. played on a Wednesday night, which was one of the things that why they brought the League Cup in, because it hadn't been in existence since about 1960 when it first started, and it was because a lot of grounds by then had floodlights, and so that the Football League decided to start a competition where all the games would be played midweek, and that's still the case now, apart from the final, which is usually played on a Sunday. So here we were playing Peterborough, third division team at home, on paper a banker, and we just didn't turn up on the night, and we're outclassed by this Peterborough team. They took the lead after 7 minutes, goal from a guy called Beasley, and then we equalised on the 25th minute. Scored by Albert Bennett. Now Albert Bennett had just joined the club from after we'd gone up, and actually he was the only signing we'd made going up from the second division to the first division. So this team that played that day, I'll just read out the team that was there: Gordon Marshall in goal, Ollie Burton, Frank Block fullbacks, Stan Anderson, Bob Monker, Jim Eiley, and Trevor Hockey, Albert Bennett, Ron McGarry, Dave Hilly, and Tommy Knox. That was pretty much the team that won promotion the season before, so I hadn't made a lot of changes to the team at that stage. And Albert Bennett was the only signing we'd made, but he scored the equalising goal. But by half time, Peterborough had scored two more. A goal got by Conway and Watson had given Peterborough a 3-1 lead, and against what you expected. I cannot remember the details of the game. I just remember the atmosphere. We're thinking we're losing heavily against a lower league team. Surely second half we're going to come out, but we pulled one back from Jim Eiley, but straight away within 10 minutes, Peterborough scored again. It was 4-2, and you just think you didn't know what was going on. The crowd were getting very restless. We pulled another goal back from Dave Hilly in the 79th minute, but couldn't get an equaliser or anything better. So it ended up we lost the game 3 goals to 4. Only 16,000 there that night. Again, the League Cup hadn't got the appeal at that time to attract a big crowd in. Although we're a first division team, and that was out of the cup. But it certainly wasn't the end of Peterborough's success in the cup, because they actually ended up getting through to the semi-final, and emphatically as well. If you look at the games, that was the second round of the competition. In the fourth round, they scored 4 again, beating Charlton 4-3. In the fourth round, they played Millwall away, won 4-1. In the quarterfinal, they beat Burnley, who were a top team, 4-0, and then came up against West Brom in the semi-final. In those days, semi-final and final were played over 2 legs, like the semi-final is now, and they lost both games to West Brom, and went out. And West Brom went on to win it. So, but Peterborough, as a third division team, did really well that year. So while it was a humiliating defeat at the time, they were obviously a team in form and banging the goals in. So maybe in hindsight, it wasn't that bad a defeat after all. So that was my first game. Newcastle 3, Peterborough 4 in September 1965.
Okay, cheers, Steve. Stu, how's your sound?
Sounds all right to me. I can hear everybody.
That's better, mate. Yeah, no
Yeah, much
echo this
better.
time, so away you go.
Right, perfect. Well, as you know, I like to be positive, but when these teams come out and you're talking about the lower league teams, it's quite obvious that we were a lower league team at the time to be playing them. So it's not normally from good seasons in Newcastle. And my first game is not Peterborough. I thought I'd book the trend, and it's a 4-3 win versus Oxford on the 19th of October 1991. Now, if people think this current season is testing, then they couldn't have witnessed the 91-92 season, that's for sure. And if those who can remember it, they'll probably have tried their best to erase it from the memory banks, because we finished our lowest ever league position. And we were bad. We were very bad. But fortunately for us, Oxford weren't that much better this day, so that's how we managed to win. Now, we'd won against Leicester the week before. So by beating Oxford in this game, it was the first time in the season that we'd won 2 games in a row. We only did it 3 times. The second time was in March, and it was against Cambridge and Swindon, where by this time Keegan had taken over. And then the last time we did it was the last 2 games of the season, which everyone remembers, which was the Ned Kelly goal against Portsmouth, and then the Leicester away, which kept us up. So back to this game. we say we nearly got relegated, as we know, on the last game of the season, and we were that close to falling into the abyss, weren't we? Or Sunderland's league, as it's called now. And yeah, but there was no like harassing players. There was no, although we booed at the games and stuff like that. That was it. Thankfully there was no social media in that year, because I think they all would have been suicidal by the time that they got home and read what was written on it. So anyway, we'll go to this game. It was one of the best games of the season. The fact that we won made it one of the best games of the season anyway. But it was a real, I think the word or the phrase is humdinger. It was end to end, more like a basketball match. And after 3 minutes, due to, not for the first time that season, some horrific defending from us, Dave went, Oxford took the lead. But what we did lack in quality, we did have determination. And Ozzy had some older players, but he was at this time he started blooding the youngsters in. So because they were local, I think that kept the crowd on the side for a bit longer as well. So 10 minutes later, we were level when Andy Hunt, for those who can remember him, he chested in the equaliser. And I'd have to stress, yes, chested. How often do you see a goal getting chested? Yeah. At the back post, and out he goes with it. And it'd be no good to me, mate. The ball would get stuck in here, wouldn't it? But see, he managed to chest it in, and off it went. So where were we? On the half hour, the star man we had in the team at that part of the season was Gavin Peacock, and he'd slot us ahead. So we went into the second half. Hold on, I've written it down here because they took the lead again. No, they equalised short into the second half, so that made the score Desmond. But literally a minute later, a young Lee Clark and Steve Howie, who Howie was a year older, I believe, but Clarkie was in his first proper season there, and he was grown into the game, and the two of them combined to put it on a plate for Gavin Peacock to score his second goal, which was very similar to his first one, to be fair. But again, Oxford equalised. We failed to clear a corner. They get it in. There's 15 minutes left, and it literally could be anyone's game. But again, young Lee Clark showed his class in an injury time. He went on a mazy run, and I know we're talking about chips and lobs last week, but he dug out this cross, and it was proper inviting. Peacock again took it home for his hat-trick. So 2 wins in a row. And 16,500 was the crowd, and most of them went home very happy because Oxford didn't have many fans. But there's one thing I wanted to say to keep it positive. That game was exactly 4 years to the day prior to Newcastle beating Man United 5-0. And we were just about to get relegated in the old third division. And there's 4 years later, so times can change and change quickly. So keep the faith, as we say.
Yeah, keep the faith. Great stuff, great recollection. I'd forgotten all about that game. It was a proper humdinger, as you said. Steve Hasty.
Evening, guys. Right, well, 26th of September 1992. That's the game that I've picked. Newcastle United v Peterborough. Everybody loves Peterborough now, don't they? But I'm going to have to take it back a couple of days. In fact, probably a week, because what happened to us was that my wife got taken into hospital. She was pregnant at the time. She was only just 7 months pregnant. And she got taken in, and that kind of knocked the whole season, doesn't it? When something like that happens, when you plan things, when you plan for babies to be born during like sort of a gap in the season and this type of thing. So my whole life was starting to like collapse around us. This was like we're in the middle of a run. We were. This was like, this is ridiculous. This team's going places anyway. There she is in hospital. She shared a room with this other lad's wife, and we got taken round. We were told that we're going to have the babies in the next week or so. We got taken around and shown the room where you were going to have the baby and all that type of thing. The birthing room, and it's like all these conversations on this Sunday afternoon. And this lad just turns around and he goes, "Can you pick and choose when you have your baby delivered?" And she said that, of course, the nurse was, "Well, sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. With your babies, it's going to be awkward, All right." He says, "Just I cannot. I'm busy on a Saturday, He says, "I cannot be coping with it, like." So she goes, "Oh, we'll see what we can do." Anyway, next thing you know, the next morning, the next evening, I goes in, and turns out that that lad's wife's had the bairn, and they're that's it. They're moved to a different part of the hospital. Baby's in was fine. and they were discharged. So when it come to the Wednesday, Thursday, and we got our little visit from the consultant, and she says, "Oh, you're going to have to. This baby's going to have to be delivered. It's probably going to be tomorrow." This was like on the Thursday night. So I said, "Oh, right, that sounds great, you know." And she goes, "Oh, well, why?" I goes, "Oh, just there's a match on Saturday, you know." And she went, "All right, okay." And she like looked at us and I goes, "Well, you arranged for this other lad for his band to be born during the week. You know, that's the least you could do." And she goes, "Well, he was a professional footballer for Newcastle United, you know. We couldn't muck up Kevin's season." And I'm going, "Well, I'm going to match. You cannot muck up mine as well." So anyway, the Friday comes. And try as she might, that little Ben did not come out. So at 8 o'clock that night, the nurses said, "Look, we're gonna stop this, and we're gonna start again tomorrow." And I'm like, "But it's Saturday tomorrow. We're getting the match. We're getting the match." So that was that kiboshed. Anyway, the Saturday comes. I just remember we're sitting in the room, and they're trying to induce the baby, and still nothing happening. And so I had a little radio with us, and batteries were running out. So I says, "Can I plug my radio in?" And he said, yeah. So I plugged the radio in for 1 o'clock, and you get Radio Newcastle starting, and there's like, I think BBC 5 Live, and you're listening to the build up of the matches and stuff like that, you know. And of course, Wallace is just lying there, you know, trying to be induced with this Ben. And I shouldn't say it like that, should I? I'm gonna get shot down in flames by people here. Anyway, it gets to 3:30, and this. The game's on. I'm listening to the commentary. I forget who the commentary was, but I'm listening to the game. And the nurse comes in. She goes, "Excuse me, would you mind unplugging the radio?" And I said, "Well, I'm listening to the match." And she goes, "Oh, it's just we need the plug." So I went, "Well, have you not got another plug? You know, it's a big room." And she's going, "Mr. Hasty, we need the plug." And I went, "Well, what for?" She goes, "For the incubator for your baby. It's going to be here in the next 15 minutes. Oh, right, okay. So unplugs the.
Could have waited till half time, Steve.
I know, exactly. I've actually got it written down. It was 1538 she was born, right? So that was it. So I mean, talk about speed. It was 3:30 when I was told to unplug it. By 15:38, the band's out, and she's in the incubator, and me and her are being rushed along to special care while they sort my wife out, you know. So anyway, I comes back, and the first thing you want to do is, like, obviously ring your folks. "Oh God, Ben's been born," and tell them that. And then I rings me mate Tony, who I go to match with, who most of you know. And Tony, I says, "Tony," says, "had the Ben?" He goes, "Is anything you can tell us?" He goes, "What's the score, by the way?" He goes, 1-0. Sheedy just scored. The 60th minute. I went, "What?" No. Game. Now we're into the match. So this was the famous game that you see on social media. That amazing. I mean, they talk about limbs now, but I mean, when that ball goes in, when Kevin Sheedy picks the ball up on the inside left position, and this is the only way I can remember it, is from that view from behind the goal, as though I was there, but I wasn't. When he gets the ball in the inside left position, and he chips over Bennett, who was a former Newcastle player at the time. And he knocks it into the far corner, and everybody just cascades. And it wasn't until years later that I saw that little film clip, and it just brings back all the memories of that particular day. The team itself that we went out with was Tommy Wright, Barry Venison, John Beresford, Liam O'Brien, Kevin Scott, Steve Howie, Rob Lee, Mickey Quinn, David Kelly, happened to be the player who was the one whose Ben managed to get born in the midweek and not at the weekend. Lee Clark and Kevin Sheedy. And on the bench, we had Kevin Brock, and who became a perennial on the bench for most of that season, Brian Kilcline, just to sort the changing room out, you know, if there was any bother, or to look after Kevin if there was any bother on the coach on the way out or on the way back. So that was the game. It was I've got something else I've got written down here that I'll just to read out. 7,000 travelling fans watch our 7th win of the season, and it was described by Ian Bennett. By Chris Turner regarding Ian Bennett. Bennett played the game of his life, the biggest game in our history. That was how it was described at the time by Peterborough. But just to close the bit, that little baby that was born on the 26th of September 1992. will be looking after Mr. Penman on Friday when he flies back to the UK on Emirates Airlines. She's arranging him for a special seat, and I've explained to her, or she's explained to me, that she said, Stewie, she will be making sure you get free drinks all the way there, or all the way home.
Well, that could be a problem.
I did explain to her that they're free anyway, pet. Don't worry about that.
Yeah, mate. It makes us feel old knowing that she was born that day and I was at that game.
Brilliant stuff, that, Steve.
You know?
Great story, great memories. I was at that
Can
game as well.
Can I add something to that game, which I think you might remember? If anybody like this that were there, that was the game. I think when you talked to Malcolm Dix and John Hall, and you talked about going across the car park. I was there in the car park. I remember it, and singing how the fans just stopped the traffic, and then and said just John Hall, and it was like God walking through the crowd. It just stopped all the traffic, and John Hall couldn't believe it. And I remember him talking about that when you did that interview. It was
amazing time. Amazing time. I mean, we were walking on cloud nine.
There was 14,000, just over 14,000 at that game, and 7,000 were Newcastle fans.
We took the place over. Like. I just remember walking through the seats. It was my first experience of an away game where we were walking through the city centre and it felt as if we were in Newcastle city centre. It was absolutely... We couldn't get in any of the bars, though. They didn't want any Newcastle fans in the bars that we were trying to get into. But good day. And, of course, you could just get straight off of the station and more or less you were at the ground at London Road. So good times. Okay, thanks to the sponsors, Spider VPN, Google Spider VPN. They come up at the top of the search list. For all your internet security, they are the boys to trust. Thank you for your sponsorship. And skipsandbins.com. Telephone 0800 25 45 25 3. Email inquiries at skipsandbins.com. Website www.skipsandbins.com. Easy, contract free and pay as you go waste collection. Thanks also to L&G Family Funeral Directors, 0191 389 7245, and Garden of Healing Dispensary, CBD, hemp and cannabinoid specialists, www.thegohd.com. Thanks also to Arcot Interiors, who are based on Heaton Road, for all your kitchen needs. Give them a shout. And thanks to qtechshop.co.uk, the makers of pool tables and snooker tables in Wallsend, Newcastle, and the makers of our website, NUFCmatters.com. Thanks also to Jab Signature, jabsignature.co.uk. Subscribe to the channel, hit Newcastle Legends logo, and like the 100 or so who've already done that this week, you can become a subscriber. Hit the thumb up to like the channel, click share to share to your social media, and drop into the comments box to speak to like-minded Newcastle fans or to pose a question. We're also available on iTunes and Spotify and other podcast providers, and you can usually hear the program within 24 hours of the show being broadcast live. Don't forget, Food Bank Match Day Bucket is still up and running. You can make a donation. NUFC fans, foodbank.co.uk. Make your donation digitally at any time during the year. Every penny counts, especially at this time of year. And a couple of events coming up, COVID permitting, of course. Peter Beardsley still on sale for the 30th of January on Groupon and Voucher. That's at the Time Theatre. It's a Sunday afternoon and we don't have a game that day. So get yourself onto Groupon or Voucher to buy your tickets for that. And a couple of events early January at the Irish Centre, both 12 quid. Entry for these, Mick Mahoney and Steve Watson on the 14th and the 28th of January at the Irish Centre. So get your tickets for those events if you want. And a couple of Christmas ideas for books. The Pavel Cernacek book is still available, as is Every Boy's Dream. Pop into the back page, St Andrews Street, or in the Metro Centre, and you'll be able to pick up those books or something else as a Christmas present for a loved one. So don't forget, support the back page. They do need as much support as they can get through this busy time. George, back to you for your second story.
Thank you, Steve. Well, it was a toss-up this second one for me with whether it was Oxford or it was Reading. And I decided on a Reading game simply because it was a fantastic game. To pinch Stu's phrase, this was a humdinger as well. And Reading made we fight for this game, and it was 6th of December in 06 season, 2006 season, and it was a Wednesday. 48,182 in the ground, and we kicked off with Given, Peter Ramage, Taylor, Babayaro, Solano, Emre, Nzogia, Milner, Butt, Martins, and Sobieski. And the sub was a lad called Rossi, who was with them for a while, with Glenn Roder as the manager. Redden were big and strong, very quick, hard tackling, but had one or two really dainty players in the team who ticked them over. But they also had some hard working players. A lad called Sidwell, who again was a player for a short while. We Newcastle looked at when we were short of people in midfield, and he certainly made his mark in this game for them. The forward line had a lad called John Oster in it, who'd had quite a fascinating career, to be honest, and I'm going to talk about him later. And of course, the other one that I was interested in was a fullback who, again, we'd looked at for some while, but didn't know anything about it, called Nicky Shorey. Anyway, the game got off to a good start, quite a quick start, end-to-end stuff. And on the 23rd minute, Sobieski put us in the lead. But we made the mistake of, and it's not the first time Newcastle have done this, of sitting back and thinking, well, that's the job done. And then a centre forward for them called Harper rattled in two in the space of 6 minutes. And we found ourselves just before half time going in 2-1 down. And then the game opened up again in the second half, end-to-end stuff. And Emery broke through and was just about to score when he was pulled down by the same Nicky Shorey that I've just talked about. And we got the penalty. And of course, who took the penalty but Obafemi Martins? And what a penalty. He must be one of the hardest hitters of a ball we've had at Newcastle, because he hit the penalty, it hit the bar and nearly took the goalpost out of the ground. And then it rattled around in the back of the net for what seemed like forever before it eventually settled down. But it put us back in the equaliser. And then just before the fight, at 85 minutes, Emery showed his class by taking a free kick from outside the penalty area over the wall into the top right-hand corner. And that was us winning 3-2. Now, Emery was, of course, a Turkish international. And one of the people who used to come with us, Neil and our crowd to the match in those days, was my friend Mehmet Atla, Professor Mehmet Atla, who was a Turkish professor that worked with me in the university for a long time. And Mehmet knew Emery very well. And so on a couple of occasions, he persuaded Emery after training to come into the university. And he'd walk into a classroom with Emery behind him. And of course, a lot of the students were football fans. So once he did that, that was the end of the lecture, because all they wanted to do was to get the autograph and talk to Emery. The other thing we used to get out of it was Emery and Mehmet, between them, knew all the Turkish restaurant owners around Newcastle. So we used to get lots of nice Turkish food at knockdown prices if we went into these restaurants. There's a one still open on Benton Road in North Tyneside called Lizette, which is a brilliant restaurant. So if ever you're in that part of Newcastle, give them a look in, you won't be disappointed. So that was Emery. We're a class lad. The other thing, as I say, I wanted to talk about some of the characters in the team. We looked at Nicky Shorey, and Nicky Shorey was in demand, to put it mildly. But this is Nicky Shorey's career. Leyton Orient, Reading, Villa, Forest, Villa, Fulham, Villa, West Brom, Reading, Bristol, Pompey, a year in India at City Pune club, Colchester, and then back to Reading. And that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 clubs in a 16-year career. But during 2010, he went from Villa to Fulham to Villa to West Bromwich Albion. I mean, my God, what a complex way to live your life, but clearly in demand. And as I say, at one stage, we were very interested in. And if you think he was bad, what about John Oster, who went from Grimsby to Everton, and at Everton they hailed him as a young up and coming star. Not for long, he ended up going to Sunderland, then Barnsley, back to Sunderland, back to Grimsby, back to Sunderland, back to Grimsby, back to Sunderland, then Leeds, then Burnley, then Reading, then Palace, Doncaster, Bournemouth, Gateshead, and then eventually back to Reading. So he's another one who, to say he's travelled, is putting it mildly. You know, 1, 2, 3, 4 times with the Mackhams. I mean, that kind of do you any good, can it? Anyway. And then when you look at their subs as well, there was a guy who used to fascinate me because he was a really, really good defender, hard worker, Leroy Lita. And he's another one who's have boots with travel. This is Leroy from for his career. Bristol City, Reading, Charlton, Reading, Norwich City, Reading, Middlesbrough, Swansea, Birmingham, Swansea, Sheffield Wednesday, Swansea, Brighton, Swansea, Barnsley, Notts County, Yeovil, and 2016 back to Reading. So in 14 years, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 clubs in 14 years. Well,
wow.
I mean, he must have something. Somebody likes him somewhere. But what a life to have. However, if you do think about the other way, if he was got even a little signing on fee when he joined these clubs, he's going to be a rich man, wasn't he? So anyway, the game was great. It was really hard fought by Reading, and Newcastle did well to come back. And Lloyd didn't score. I've got to mention that the man of the match for me actually was Milner. James Milner was the outstanding hard worker in midfield, and he made all the plays and set things up nicely. And him and Emery between them cut Reading apart when they chose to. So that's my second game. Reading win 3-2. Thank you.
Good stuff, George. Great stuff. Okay, Mitch, on to you.
Okay, my second game is also against Reading. It's an FA Cup 4th round replay on the 31st of January 1990. Two things stand out for games against Reading for me that season, and that's they were all crackers. They were all nuts. We'd played them earlier in over 2 legs in the League Cup and lost 3-1 away from home and then beat them 4-0 at home to go through 5-3 on aggregate. And then in the FA Cup, we got them in the 4th round and we drew 3-3 about 3 days before this tie. 2 of their goals came from horrendous back passes of ours. The second one being right on full time. So we were expecting a bit of a humdinger. The other thing I remember about Reading that season, they dropped that traditional hoops, and they were wearing an all blue, like a sky blue with royal blue. And I'm sure that's around about the time they were trying to tout the merging of Oxford and Reading to create Thames Valley Royals. I'm not sure about my dates on that one, but I suspect it was tied in with that. We're talking about Oxford and Reading today, and for people who don't remember or don't know, there was a time when there were serious discussions about merging the 2 teams to form one team that would have been known as Thames Valley Royals, and I think most of that push was coming from the Reading side. So that's the 2 things I remember about Reading that season. This game was equally as bonkers, but in a better way for us. We ran out 4-1 winners. I just remember we're turning it on. I remember Roy Aitken having a cracking game. He set up the first goal for Mark McGee in about 10 minutes and then brought down a Simpson cross to set McGee up for the second on 20. And that just set the pattern for the game. Reading really, in the first half, couldn't get a kick. Second half, McGee hit the post just about straight from half time. And it was Mickey Quinn who made it 3-0 on 55 minutes. On 87 minutes, Reading managed to get a goal back. They sort of clawed their way back into the game. And then I think it was Darren Robinson on as a sub got the 4th into injury time, and that was a sweet cross shot across the keeper into the bottom corner, if I remember rightly. And it was again one of those games that went, and I think Steve's talked about this most of all of it, about how we get in the cup and we get to a certain point in the cup and we start to get really, really excited. And we were all getting really excited after that game, and we got even more excited when the 5th round draw brought an in-form Manchester United to St James's Park. And it was a game picked out by Match of the Day to be on the telly on the Sunday. We ended up losing the game 3-2, but we gave a fantastic account of ourselves. And it was sort of setting the hopes for what we hoped was going to be the future. And obviously that season we didn't go up. We lost to Sunderland in the playoffs. It didn't really go according to plan. But that game in particular was a real cracker. One, I remember getting the feeling the cup of fever start to spread around. And like I say, we played Reading 4 times that season. And between the 4 games, there was 15 goals. So for some reason, Reading seemed to bring the best and worst out of it. But at least we went through one in this cup on a replay. And that's my second game.
Great memories of that game as well. Great memories of that FA Cup game as well. With the big crowd, and as you say, we hope we're going to get a result, but we didn't. Go on, George.
Wasn't it the bloke that stadium's named after, Medeski? Wasn't he the bloke that tried to get the merger going?
I think so.
Yeah.
Had it been tried a bit earlier with Robert Maxwell?
From the Oxford side, yes.
Yeah, no doubt about that. I mean, the other thing about that, didn't it? yeah. The other thing about that game that obviously I remember is the Gerald Sinstadt, of course, the late great Gerald Sinstadt, who passed away recently. I think it was only a couple of weeks ago that he passed away. He was actually outside the ground doing the interviews with Newcastle fans as the crowd was building up to the game. And on that particular occasion, I went to the game. But I decided, because obviously Mickey Quinn at that time was my hero, I decided to go and dress up as Mickey Quinn. I had the tash on and everything. I think
was it that game? Was it?
That was the game itself. Yeah. And, I actually went with a guy called. I actually went along with a guy called Steve Cross, who was from Scunthorpe, great lad, who at the time was helping us with the Newcastle fanzine. And when the second goal went in for Newcastle, he dislocated his arm. And I just remember listening back to watching back on the footage, because he ended up going to the St John's ambulance tent and then ended up going to hospital. And as the game's panning out towards the end, Newcastle are losing 3-2. And there's an announcement comes over the tannoy on the match, on the actual videotape that I've still got. And his name's actually announced. Could Steve Wraith please come to the first aid tent? Actually, I've just found it. This is the little bit of footage. Hold on.
It's great to be in the cup, and my brother's really pleased that he's going to be there. He said to me that he's going to hit a couple of goals in there, and a goal in for the rest of the lads, so come back,
Classic. Not the best audio, but God, I was a sharp dresser back in them days with a suit on and that. Going to the match. Wasn't even going in the corporate, I was going in the Gallagher. But happy memories. Cheers for reminding us of that, which I forgot I'd actually got a little clip of that sent to us by my dad the other day as well. So great stuff. All right, Stu, on to you for your second game.
My second game is 15 months after the one I've just talked about. So fast forward from October 91 to January 1993. And this time I am talking about Peterborough. If the previous season was one of despair, this one was full of exhilaration and on fairy tale stuff, wasn't it? The promotion season under Keegan. And the turnaround in performances, results and expectations were just through the roof. So the first goal come on the half hour when Gavin Peacock dummied a player on the left-hand side of the box, and he put in a cross across the 6-yard line. And that just screamed, hit me. So Rob Lee just obliged and I nearly swore there, knocked it into the net with a bit of oomph, shall we say. It was a really good goal, quick goal. And we deserved it because we were dominating the game. And the next one didn't come until I think it was about the 70th minute or so. But again, it was Rob Lee, and he had this trademark of running late from similar to the goals that Willock was scoring last season for younger people, where he would make the run, the ball would get flicked on, and he'd end up being 1-on-1 with the keeper after making this 20-yard run as if no one could see him. And the way he used to just dispatch it, it was like with unerring accuracy. It would just go straight into above the keeper, but into the net as the keeper tried to cover himself. So that ended the game as the contest, and then it was David Kelly that had flicked the ball through for him. So Kelly himself then got his goal that his performance deserved, and with a diving header at the back post. And again, Gavin Peacock was excellent that day, and he looked a crossover for Kelly to knock it in. Now, I know we've mentioned on this programme many times that Kevin Keegan's signing, most valuable signing in terms of what the gift to the club was Brian Killer's his contribution. And it was critical to our survival last season. But Aussie's best signing it was in the December the previous year, and that was David Kelly in '91. And I think sometimes he gets overlooked for not just his goals, but his performance and his non-stop running and his intelligence. Because him and Peacock together were really intelligent footballers, and they both had an excellent eye for goal as well. But David Kelly, he would do the hard work. He was like Paul Goddard, from the previous teams, but he could finish the ball as well. And it was great to watch him. And it was fantastic that we ended up getting promoted, and he got a hat-trick on the last day. So if we look at it, and then you think the transformation between this season and last season, and that, you're talking, like as I said, in just 15 months of transformation of the team, and that's without being the richest club in the world. All it needs is a bit of hope, a bit of togetherness, and the dreams are reality there, aren't they? And if we look at the game I've just talked about now, strangely, we went on a run where we didn't win that was when the 16th of January, didn't win again until the end of February, which was the Tranmere game that I talked about last week. So, and we still walked away with the league at the end. So just keep the faith. Good times are coming. And that's the way I say it.
Great stuff. Steve Wilkinson.
Right. Well, my second game's from the same season that George and Mitch talked about earlier on, the 2009-2010 season, when we went up under Chris Hughton. And it was the first home game of that season. We played in Reading on the 15th of August. And just to set the scene at that time, it was only a few weeks earlier that we'd played that infamous game against Leyton Orient, a friendly, when we lost 6-1, and it was a sort of wake-up call. So we're sort of getting ourselves sorted out from that. It was also, sadly, only a couple of weeks since Sir Bobby Robson passed away, and the start of this game started with probably got the atmosphere going right with one of the best minutes applauses, and I think it could have gone on for ages. Just people didn't want to stop the minutes applause for Sir Bobby at the start of that game, but I think it helped to build an atmosphere, and it was galvanised the team, I think, into what turned out to be a good performance and a 3-0 win. And a 3-0 win as a result of 3 goals from Shola Amiobi. He's one and only ever hat-trick for Newcastle. Shola, I think, over the years, he played nearly 400 games for the club, one of the longest serving players right from the apprenticeship. He actually went to school with the son of one of my mates, and I think he wasn't the best player then, but he obviously developed and improved in his time in the academy, and made a good start in the junior teams. And Newcastle even got into England under 21. So although he never got a full international cap and ended up playing international games for his native Nigeria. But this game, as I say, it was a 36,000 crowd. We were in the second division, so it was down on what we'd had, but it was the start. And by the end of the season, we're back up to the mid to 40s. And it was also at the time interesting, given what we've seen in recent months, is that there was a lot of speculation about a takeover being done in 2009, 2010. Who would have believed it would have taken 10 years? And actually was at the game, and but he saw at this time that the team were going to put an effort in. The 3 goals that Shola scored were, just give you the team for that day as well, just before we go into it. Steve Harper in goal, Ryan Taylor at fullback, Stephen Taylor, Colaccini, Jose Enrique left back, Kevin Nolan, Joey Barton, Alan Smith in midfield, Jonas Gutierrez on the left, Shola and Andy Carroll up front. Quite a decent team, you would think. And with having those 2 big guys up front, it was all about getting the crosses in, and the goals came, all of them from crosses. The first goal in the I think it was what was it? 38th minute, I think it was. I think I've talked about this the previous time. I always enjoyed Jose Enrique and Gutierrez going down the left wing and overlapping, and this was another typical attack like that. Jonas had the ball, put Enrique in. He went and clipped a beautiful cross that you just waiting to head it in. It was Shola of the 2. You might have thought Andy Carroll was probably the more prolific header of the ball, but it was Shola who stole it at the back post and hit a downward header, and it sort of bounced in and deceived the keeper and went in. That gave us a 1-0 halftime lead. In the 61st minute, similar goal, but it was from the other side this time. We'd got the ball was running out of play, and Kevin Nolan chased after it, and he laid it back. This time Ryan Taylor, another fantastic outswinging cross, and Shola met it perfectly and headed in his second goal. And a little bit later on, he actually nearly scored again. There was a corner. Joey Barton took the corner, and the keeper had to make a fantastic save, or he nearly got a hat-trick of headers. But in the 71st minute, we actually got a penalty. A corner was taken by Joey Barton, went way over the far side, and it was probably not in any danger area. But Shane Long, who, as you know, has gone on to play for various clubs, including Southampton, in his time. I used to like Shane Long. I always thought he gave a lot. And for some reason, he was back defending and handled the ball, got a penalty, and it was down to Shola to bang in the penalty and end up getting a hat trick. And he, obviously that was a fantastic achievement for him. And over his time with Newcastle, he was a great servant. He's currently he's the Lone Ranger or whatever you might want to call him. Whether that's a job that'll carry on in the future and how we'll reshape the team. But that set us on our way to what ended up being a successful season, getting back into the Premier League at the first attempt of going down. Let's not repeat it. That's my second game tonight.
Good stuff. Okay, on to you, Steve Hasty.
Right. Well, I've picked the game the same season as the previous one. This game was notorious for being known as the After the Lord Mayor Show game. It was a Thursday night in May. It was 48 hours after we'd beaten Grimsby to get promotion. And we had this rearranged game against Oxford to contend with before we then had the big party, which was going to be on the Sunday, which everybody who, I'm sure remembers, which was the 7-1 game that Stewie's mentioned earlier when we beat Leicester. But this was a Thursday night. Very unusual at St James's Park to be there on a Thursday. There was still 29,438 turned up. But to say it was subdued would be an understatement. And to say that Oxford came out with all guns blazing wouldn't be an understatement, because it did. And quite frankly, they gave a runaround for about the first hour. It was though we had a hangover or something like that. I don't know. Maybe we'd celebrated a little bit too much down at Grimsby. The fans were a bit like that, but so were the players. There was a number of opportunities, but we just seemed to be totally off key during this game. What's also unusual about this game is that Kevin Keegan wasn't there. He hadn't walked out or anything like that, but he'd taken ill, and he had a stomach bug, so he left the ground before kickoff, and we ended up winning 2-1. I had to say that now because I've picked up a little quote from the newspaper which I thought was just typical Terry McDermott. Terry said that Kevin was passing Washington when our first goal went in. He was at Peterborough when the second one, Peter Lee when the second one went in. And he goes, and then when Oxford pulled one back, that's when he crashed. So that was typical Terry Mack, giving you a little synopsis of how he felt the game went. But we didn't get anywhere until the 61st minute when Gavin Peacock came on. He replaced Paul Bracewell in midfield, and we'd missed Peacock for the previous 12 games. He had been injured, he'd been out in that whole run up and he had been a vital cog in that team up until then with his goals and everything else that he supplied. But in the 70th minute, we managed to go ahead with a goal by Lee Clark. In the 78th minute, we went 2-0 up. Andy Cole, if you want to know the stats, this was, bearing in mind Cole hadn't made his debut until March for Newcastle. This was his 9th goal in 10 games. That's how prolific Andy Cole was that season. God, was he prolific the following season when between him and Peter Beardsley, I think they scored 40 odd goals, didn't they? Probably more.
Do you know what, lads? Is that not part of David Kelly's problem? He was after Quinn and before Cole.
Yeah.
And everybody wants to talk about the two either side of him. And he gets kind of lost in the middle.
And what Kelly was, and Stewie, I think that's what Stewie was alluding to. He was 100% who covered every blade of grass. He did the running for anybody. He would run no matter who the striking partner was. He wouldn't take the huff. Whether it was Quinn or his Cole or anyone, he was always there. You could always rely on him. I think it was the 20th of March when Cole made his debut. He came on against Swindon in a defeat, and then he made his debut on the 20th of March. And so now by May, he scored 9 goals in 10 games. It's remarkable. But having Peacock back, it sort of set the scene. They scored a minute after we went 2-0 up. Oxford with a nice little goal. But I mean, the party was the following week. This was really the after the Lord Mayor show in terms of the fact we'd been promoted and we wanted to celebrate. But you cannot celebrate on a Thursday night, can you? You have to wait until the weekend. So that's my game, Steve. Rounded off Oxford United and probably rounded off with one game to go, but we've already done Leicester. That 1992-93 season.
Yeah, great stuff, lads. Some great recollections. And again, these games you think are going to, these teams you think you're going to struggle with, to be honest, in getting any content. You've actually done wonders. So well done, lads. Been great. Great to hear the recollections and the stories again. As always, we now finish off with a little bit of fun, a little bit of teasers, and we'll start with players who played for both teams or managers that manage teams. Here we go.
Tony, isn't it?
Ivan Toney.
Yeah. Ivan Toney, yes. Yeah. Just celebrating another hat trick the hell had.
That's Kevin Dillon.
Kevin Dillon, isn't it?
Yeah. Been there as a player, been there as a manager at Reading, and of course the man who never scored for Newcastle when I put my bet on his first score, and then went to Reading and scored on his debut. So yeah, Kevin Dillon.
Alan Pardew.
Alan Pardew, and he's one of his earlier managerial roles.
Kevin
Brock.
There we go.
Oxford.
Kevin Brock.
Steve McLaren.
Steve McLaren.
Oxford midfielder then.
Dwight Gale.
A very young Dwight Gale there, guys.
Is it?
Definitely.
Steve Clark.
Mark McGee.
Andy Cole.
Andy
Carroll.
Danny Guthrie.
What the heck that is, by the way.
Yeah.
I thought it was your moustache from that video.
Paul Simpson.
Yeah.
Mike Williamson.
Yeah.
Jim Smith. My goodness.
Oh, We've gone into the fans there. Sorry, guys. So that was the players, celebrity fans.
David Bowie, is it?
Very, very like David Bowie, but it's not.
I didn't think he was one of them.
I'm going to have a guess. Here. It's just with the eyes. Ricky Gervais.
Correct. Well done.
Oh, yeah.
Bloody hell.
Check the eyes. It's
Jim Rosenthal.
Jim Rosenthal, yeah.
Jim Rosenthal, another well-known commentator, of course.
That looks like Kate Winslet.
Correct. Yeah.
It is. Yes,
Really?
it is. Oxford fan. Oxford fan.
Well, the rules just stopped.
Oh, that's the bloke off Talk Sport.
Adrian
Durham.
Adrian Durham.
Durham.
Adrian Durham.
Tarrant. Chris
Tarrant.
Chris Tarrant.
Chris Tarrant.
Tim Henman.
Tim Henman.
Tim Henman.
Tim Henman.
Richard Branson.
Richard Branson.
Branson.
A young Richard
Looks
Branson.
like Mike Myers, doesn't it?
Does I?
Timmy.
Timmy
Mallet.
And last but by no means least.
Is it Woody Harrelson?
It is Woody Harrelson. Clean sweep on that,
Steve.
Clean sweep on the players and on the celebrities, guys. Okay, George, we'll come to you for your team or teams.
Right. This is me Oxford offering. Steve Hardwick, Gordon Hodgson, Danny Rose, Andy Thomas, Mike Williamson, Ken Hale, Lewis Guy, Bill Whitehurst, Imre Verardi, and 10 somewhere, John Truick, and 11 was Kevin Brock. And I made the manager Jim Smith.
Great stuff, Mitch.
Right.
Do you want the other team? The other teams?
All right, okay, yeah. You did a pregnant pause, George, as if you'd finished.
That's not like me. Never mind. Me Reading offering is Shaka Hislop, Ray Ranson, Andy Griffin, Danny Guthrie, Norman Dodson, Joe Wilson, Billy Whitehead, Les Ferdinand, and Paul Brayson and Andy Carroll. And I managed to cheat a little bit with the centre forward for that team. I couldn't find another one, so I made Tommy Wright into an outfield player because I gather he used to like playing centre forward in training. So Tommy Wright sneaked in. And Peterborough, Jack Fairbrother, the old cup final goalkeeper, was my choice for goal. Seb Bassong, George Hay, the old 1940s player, Mick Martin, Stephen Taylor, Jim Ailey, Andy Donaldson, Tommy Robson on the outside, Stephen Taylor got in at centre half, and that one I made the player manager for what he did for us was Andy Donaldson. So that's it. That's my offering for the three.
Great stuff. Okay, Mitch.
Yeah, I got three teams as well. For Oxford, I've got Hardwick and goal, a back three of Mike Williamson, Danny Rose, and Gordon Hodgson, and then a midfield of Andy Thomas, John Truick, Kevin Brock, and Steve McLaren. Up front, Imre Verardi, Billy Whitehurst, and Dean Saunders, and I made the manager Jim Smith. And then for Peterborough, Ian Bennett in goal. Back three of Darren Bradshaw, Stephen Taylor, and Seb Bassong. The midfield four of Jim Ailey, who I've got in as player manager. Mick Martin, David Roach, and Andy Parkinson. And then up front, Ivan Toney, my good mate Tony Loma, and the youthful Dwight Gale. And then finally for Reading, Shaka Hislop in goal. Full backs of Andy Griffin and Paul Bowden. Centre backs Lewis Gibson, if anybody remembers the young superstar that went to Everton and then disappeared. And his centre back partner Zorab Kijinishvili, who, you know, that's a name to conjure with. Three midfielders of Danny Guthrie, Kevin Dillon, and Michael O'Neill. And a forward three of Les Ferdinand, Andy Carroll, and Mark McGee, all managed by Alan Pardew.
Okay.
Well, I'm going to be friendly and just do one team. Got Shaka in goal, fullbacks of super Ray Ranson and Andy Griffin, centre halves Williamson and Steve Taylor. A midfield from the 80s was Brock, Kevin Dillon, and Michael O'Neill, and a front three of Andy Carroll, Celeste Ferdinand, and Mark McGee, managed by Jim Smith.
All right, and Steve Wilkinson.
Well, I'm glad Stu's not the only one that's doing one team, because I've only got one team now. I had a go at getting some more, but I just in the end did this. So my team is combined team: Shaka Hislop in goal, Andy Griffin, Stephen Taylor, Mike Williamson, Seb Bassong at the back, Mick Martin, Jim Ailey, Kevin Brock in the midfield, and up front Imre Verardi, Andy Carroll, Les Ferdinand, and I've got Jim Smith as manager as well.
And Steve Hasty, last but by no means least, as I always say.
I just did one team as well. I put Shaka in goal. I went for a back three of Kishnishvili, Mike Williamson, and Stephen Taylor. I went for a four in midfield because a bit like Man City. This I've got Andy Thomas, Guthrie, Danny Guthrie, that is, Mick Martin, and Kevin Brock in the midfield. What a midfield that would have been. It would have knocked Man City. They were cocked at. And then I've got up front, I've got Verardi, Ferdinand, and Michael O'Neill. And I had to go with the Bald Eagle, Jim Smith as a manager.
Lads, been an absolute pleasure tonight, as always, doing this. We're going to have a week off next week, and obviously we're coming into the Christmas period. We've only got a couple more shows to go. We've got FA Cups to look at, FA Cup matches. We've got Barcelona as well. We've already pre-recorded the European night, so we'll be in touch in the group chat and arrange the next one. But for now, lads, have a good night. Thanks for joining us as always, and thanks to everybody for chipping in on the chat. Good night.
Cheers,
everyone.
Bye.
Talking to myself again, but it's